Hey everyone, before we get into today's video, just wanted to give you guys a heads up. I actually recorded this video starting about a week ago. I've been editing it the entire time. I'm just a slow editor, but I did want to let you know that I updated these potential values last at the end of February going into March. So some of these are a little bit outdated, and obviously draft stocks have changed since then. So I think more than anything, it's important to understand how I think about rating these players in my draft class more so than the values that you see on the screen. I will keep you guys posted when my April draft class update releases. I don't expect it will be the first Sunday of the month this time because the championship game will be on April 6th. So I'll probably wait until the next weekend to do a final update of everybody to reflect the entirety of the season. Also, if anyone is interested, I will be creating a March Madness bracket group. If you want to join, see how you compare against me. I'm sure you guys are going to absolutely destroy me in that. I will have information in the description or in the comments of this video, so just check that out if you want to see how you fare against my bracket. All right, now let's get into the rest of the video. So today we're going to talk about draft strategy when it comes to my draft class in NBA 2K26. If you haven't used my draft class before and you happen to be on PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series console, here is the draft class name so you can download it. Before we jump into the players themselves, we need to talk about how the player outcomes work in NBA 2K26. In general, I think there are 6 things that you need to consider before drafting a prospect, both in real life and in NBA 2K26. Those 6 things are: what is the current player's overall rating? What's their potential, or in other words, what's their average future outcome going to be? How old is the player? Are they healthy? Do they have a good track record of health? What's their role going to be on the team that they're drafted to? And then what is your individual risk tolerance in drafting a player at that position? Current overall is a snapshot at the level at which a player can contribute right now and might not matter to you as much if you can afford to be patient with a draft prospect. This works in tandem with the potential rating, which shows the possible trajectory of a player's future contributions to a team. The best prospects combine the best of both worlds, giving you high levels of current production with space and room to grow into super high level contributors as well. A prospect with a higher overall but a lower potential will contribute to your team immediately, but will not continue to progress and develop much further than the version of them that they are right now. Age also plays a factor into this because every player in my draft class peaks at age 26. So the closer you are to age 26, the less time you'll have to develop towards that potential trajectory. Health and role also play a part in determining how a player turns out, because if a player is hampered by injuries, they're going to be stunted in their development. And if a player doesn't have opportunity to play or get sufficient minutes, they also will develop at a slower pace. Next, I want to talk about 2 terms I'm going to revisit in this video. Those 2 terms are EV and standard deviation. EV stands for expected value, and you could think of it as, on average, what overall rating will my player peak at? Again, assuming they're not stunted by either their health or their age. So players with higher value in the draft class will have a higher EV. Standard deviation, on the other hand, is the level of variation in the outcomes of a prospect. You could kind of think about this as how risky is this prospect, with higher values being more risky and lower values being safe prospects. Think about all of the guys in the NBA draft who've been drafted in that Giannis archetype, that KD archetype, that Kristaps Porzingis archetype. There is a large level of variation between Alex Pokusevski, Jaden McDaniels, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Those are high risk, high standard deviation prospects. Some of them turn out great. Some of them turn out okay, and some of them turn out pretty bad. Low risk or low standard deviation prospects are also not perfect. You know what you're going to get a little bit more confidently, but the ceiling is also limited on these sorts of players. Most players who are in the draft who've been in school for 4 years tend to fit this bill. The variation in these outcomes and these concepts of EV and standard deviation are made possible because of 2K's boom, bust, and average potential options, as well as the min, max, and average potential ratings that you assign to players in the draft class. This makes it so that you don't get the same draft class experience every single time you use my draft class in NBA 2K26. Obviously, in real life, there's a million ways a prospect could turn out. We're limited to 3 in NBA 2K, so I'm trying to keep it reasonable within those 3 possible outcomes per player. Caleb Wilson could break into the top 3. Darren Peterson could drop out at the top 5. You just never know, and that's what I love about this option in NBA 2K. The last housekeeping item I want to touch on before we go into my players is the way I interpret the rating scale in NBA 2K, because that's core to how I see these players projecting in the game. So my personal opinion is that the overall ratings in NBA 2K can be split into 11 different groups. You can pause here if you want to see how I break it down by overall rating value. So now let's put all these concepts together when it comes to my draft class. I've broken out the top 35 EV players in my draft class into 6 different tiers, and I'm going to go tier by tier. For reference, I have big board ranks from NoCeilingsNBA.com and RookieScale.com. No Ceilings NBA, you should definitely check them out and follow them if you're into draft stuff. It's a team of 10 draft experts, and together they put together a consensus mock board. RookieScale.com takes together a bunch of the top draft experts from across outlets and puts them into a consensus big board. So tier 1, I have Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsa, Cameron Boozer. You guys have been hearing me call it the big 3 all year, and for good reason. As you can see by their expected values, Darren Peterson I have as a superstar, and AJ DeBonsa and Cameron Boozer I have in the all-NBA tier. 94 and 93 are where I, on average, would expect their overall values to settle. Looking at the standard deviations, Cameron Boozer is clearly the safest amongst these 3 to draft, and his minimum potential is 87, making him a borderline all-star at minimum, but it's a very low probability that he's going to hit that. Instead, focus more for him on the potential and the max potential. That's where he's going to tend to settle. So even though he's ranked 3rd in EV, Cam Boozer might still be your number 1 selection if your risk tolerance is low and you care more about avoiding a bust than that potential jump from all NBA to like all-time great levels that you see I have for DeBonsa and Peterson. Caleb Wilson is in a tier 2 to himself, just behind the big 3. He has an expected value of 88.3, so I expect him on average to be an all-star caliber of player. One thing to keep in mind here is he is a little bit older than a lot of the freshmen in this class. He'll be 20 years old by the time his rookie year begins. Best case scenario I have for Caleb Wilson, if the shooting comes around, if the defense is elite, and he's basically just a 6'10 Evan Mobley, 91 overall is what I have that at. And in the worst case scenario, I still have him being a decent starter at 83 overall. My tier 3 consists of 4 players. They are the 4 freshman guards that people love to talk about. I think if you have a top 8 pick in your draft, these are the collection of players that you should think about. So we have Kingston Flemings, Michael Brown, Keaton Wagler, and Darius A. Cuff Jr. In my opinion, right now, Kingston Flemings gives you the best combination of size, scoring, defense, and athleticism in playmaking. So I have him as the highest rated point guard and also as having the highest expected value. I also think that Michael Brown has the highest upside of any guard not named Darren Peterson in this class. The combination, again, of size, playmaking, and the shooting, if it really comes around and becomes consistent, is a real weapon. So I think that he has the highest upside of any of these players. But as you can see by the standard deviation value, I think his range of outcomes is the widest. I think when it looks bad, it can be pretty bad. But when it looks really good, it could be really good. Then lastly, I have Keaton Wagler and Darius Acuff. I look at them pretty similarly as far as projecting their next level impact. I'm honestly starting to feel higher on Darius Acuff. He's put together a very impressive string of games and performances. I just personally think that the lack of vertical athleticism for both Keaton Wagler and Darius Acuff gives them a slightly lower ceiling than Kingston Fleming's and Michael Brown. And these two guys, Wagler and Acuff, aren't exactly known for their defense right now. So I tend to see Michael Brown and Kingston Flemings as having the higher ceilings. Tier 4, I think, is the most interesting tier of all the tiers, and that's because Tier 3 consisted of all guards. Realistically, every team is not going to need or going to want to draft a guard from picks 5 through 8. So some players might get plucked from this Tier 4 just due to positional need. This is also the tier where all of your considerations come into play here. So technically speaking, I have Jaden Quaintance listed here as ranked number 9, but he also has a right knee durability reduction. So he is more apt to get injured and have his growth stunted, on top of the fact that he has the highest standard deviation of all these prospects. So kind of taking a closer glance at things, I would probably knock Jaden Quaintance down closer to 12 than where he sits right now, just based on these values. You also have Nate Ament, who has been on and off during the season. He started off really poorly, and then he's been playing extremely well before he got injured. Braylon Mullins, there's some questions of whether he's just a shooter, whether his frame is going to hold up at the next level. Koa Pete, you have some questions about what role is he going to play at the next level. Braden Burries, he also, similar to Nate Ament, struggled at the beginning of the year, is playing his best basketball right now. So there's a wide range of possible outcomes for those guys in particular, I think. Contrast that with the more experienced guys, LeBaron Philon. You have your Yaxel Lendeborg, Bennett Sturts, Thomas Hauk. These are guys who've shown that they can play a role and play it well. LeBaron Philon has come back to school, increased his usage, his playmaking, his shooting has developed. And last year, he also showed that he can scale down and play a role. So that's going to give you immediate value, and that's why his standard deviation is lower than some of these other guys. Yaxel Lendeborg can plug and play at any position from 3 to 5, contributes defensively, has a versatile skill set offensively. Bennett Sturts, fantastic playmaker, shot maker, floor general, has done it for 4 years now and different stops. Thomas Hauk went from sixth man at Florida last year to being arguably Florida's best offensive player right now. Can guard 3 through 5, basically. So these are guys who could come in and contribute immediately. There is a lot of value in that. But again, you have to take into consideration these guys are a little bit older. So depending on your risk tolerance and depending on what your team needs are, that might change how you rank these players within this tier. Tier 5 is the last crop of players that I would project to be starters and high-level sixth men for the most part. I think the names that stand out to me are Tunde Yesufu. I'm higher on him than some of the other outlets in No Ceilings or Rookie Scale. I like the potential upside you could get from Tunde Yesufu. We've seen him, what he offers as just a hyper competitor, as a defender. We've seen him score 37 against BYU. But I also understand that he needs to improve his feel, like getting to the free throw line as a scorer. That free throw rate is not great. Also, his processing as a passer is not great right now either, although he doesn't turn the ball over very much. And he really struggled finishing at the rim at the beginning of the year, which was a little bit concerning. Chris Senak Jr. has the highest standard deviation of any player up to this point. I think he offers a very intriguing set of physical tools and potential skills. He's shown shooting touch. He has vertical athleticism. He has a great wingspan and physical frame. And he has good feet to switch on the perimeter as well. But you don't see him perform defensively like as a rim deterrent very often. The offense can come and go. Houston has really needed an interior post offensive presence, which I was really hoping could be Chris Senak. And it really hasn't been. He's just been mostly floating on in the mid-range area and taking threes. And this is one of those players I think has a really wide range of outcomes. If it all comes together, we're looking at somebody who's going to be a super valuable center in this league. And obviously, if it doesn't come together, that's not as valuable of a player. So all in all, Chris Senak Jr. still has the highest max potential of this group, but it's just the probability of doing that versus seeing his worst outcome. It's a little bit closer than you'd like it to be between those two outcomes. And then last but not least, you have tier 6. So tier 6 here consists of players that I see as being rotation players on an NBA team as their outcome. A lot of these players have limitations like physically or in their style of play. So if you think of a guy like Adai Mera, he's someone who I don't really see as being a full-time starter, just, 7'3" and being his size. I just don't see him being a full-time center, like as a starter. And then you have a guy like Tyler Tanner, who's the exact opposite. I just don't see that archetype of player being a full-time starter in today's NBA. Ibuka Okori, same kind of deal. He's a little bit taller, but still kind of fits into that small guard archetype. Isaiah Evans, what kind of a player is he if the three-point shot doesn't fall? Flory Badunga, what's his offensive impact going to be? He's also a little bit undersized for the center position. So all of these guys have their foibles as prospects, but can still be high-level contributors, in my opinion. But the standard deviation is the one that stands out to me. So I see Tyler Tanner has the highest standard deviation. Again, I think he could be an excellent player if it all works out for him. Obviously, he just has the size concerns working against him. If it doesn't work out, like there just is not really much of a role for that kind of player with that physical profile in the NBA. I know he's getting dunks. I know he has defensive impact, but the NBA is just a different animal. And then you have Malik Thomas, who kind of fits into that scoring shooting guard archetype that's starting to like die out in the NBA. I still think that's valuable to have as like a sixth man who could score and eat up usage. But what does that look like on the most competitive of teams? Is that a starter level of player? Like to me, on the best of best teams, that's not a starter level of player. You're seeing that with what's happened with Cam Thomas during this season. And that's all I have for today's video. I will put a screenshot of the tier lists on screen so you guys can have that to reference. Keep in mind that my opinions and these ratings are fluid and can definitely change as we get more information down the stretch of the postseason, and reasonable minds can disagree here. So you can totally have a different opinion. I could be completely wrong in the end, but this is all just a process that everybody kind of learns from. So excited to see how the end of the season turns out. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider subscribing and let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks again, and hope to see you in the next one.